when her estranged husband is murdered by one of his former co-conspirators over the stolen $250,000 they lifted from the U.S. government during World War II. A woman must work with a man she only just met to find the money and free herself from their relentless pursuit in the 1963 romantic thriller Charade, starring Audrey Hepburn and Cary Grant. And that's the movie we're digging up this week on Movie Bones.
Sylvia, I'm getting a divorce.
Why'd you want a divorce?
I loathe the whole idea of divorce, Sylvie. But if only Charles had been honest with me, that's all I ask of anybody, the simple truth. But with Charles, everything is secrecy and lies. He's hiding something from me, Sylvie. Something terrible. And it frightens me.
That's Regina Lampert, played by Audrey Hepburn, and she's talking about the man she's about to find out has been murdered in connection to $250,000 that he helped steal from the U.S. government with a few other GIs during World War II. The same group of guys who are now out to get her for suspecting her to be in possession of that ill-gotten loot. Only one person stands with her, a stranger she just met who goes by the name of Peter Joshua, played by Cary Grant.
Do we know each other?
Why do you think we're going to?
I don't know. How would I know?
Because I already know an awful lot of people, and until one of them dies, I couldn't possibly meet anyone else.
Well, if anyone goes on the critical list, let me know.
Quitter.
And it's quickly apparent that their meeting is not quite all that coincidental. And that's basically the setup. There's so much to say about this film, but I think we can start with the tricky balancing act the film does with kind of like the banter like that we've just seen, which is rather light and airy, and it just kind of has, and sometimes it can even be a little silly too. Later on, there's a scene where Cary Grant actually steps into a shower fully clothed and does this whole little monologue where he's making fun of himself. And I like that part about it too. Peter's name, I said it almost in air quotes back there. He's not exactly who he says he is in the beginning, and their meeting isn't quite that coincidental. This is one of those movies that you have to expect just a lot of intrigue. And it does develop that very well. And it does it in a way that's actually pretty clever, doesn't it? It avoids a lot of traps that are in the genre.
Yeah, it does. Because this movie's a weird movie. I say that with love in my heart. This movie is a weird movie. In fact, I'm going to read you. Guys, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page right now. And there's another reason why I'm looking at the Wikipedia page. But I love the first line. So you go look this up yourself. The first line of the Wikipedia page says this: Charade, or Charade, depending on how you want to pronounce that word, is at 1963, and this is perfectly encapsulates exactly what this movie is a 1963 American romantic screwball comedy mystery film.
Screwball comedy. I don't know if I'd quite put it in those terms, but it is, like I said, it can be really silly at times.
It can be. And I'm going to be real with you. One of the reasons why it's so silly is because of our leading lady. And not just our leading lady, but who is the great Audrey Hepburn, but her chemistry with a very straight man. When I say straight man, I'm like,
yes.
Her comedy to his dry humor, Cary Grant.
Yeah, that deadpan dry humor, yeah.
It works so well together that when it boxes this in and says romantic screwball comedy mystery film, I'm like, yeah, I get it. I get exactly what you're saying.
I'm not the world's biggest Cary Grant fan. In fact, he doesn't really kind of affect me as much as the name would kind of imply that his abilities, kind of like he's got that legendary status,
Yeah.
But it doesn't really have that effect on me. So I've often been left kind of cold by his stuff. But maybe it's just because he's with Audrey Hepburn. I think it's also because the script is a little different than the ones he has taken in the past, where it takes away some of that, his more harder edged kind of, blunt force, dialogue that he's always, it was especially more prevalent, I think, in the 50s too. But now that we're in the 60s, maybe that's kind of softened up a bit. And so he has more self-deprecating humor here. So the charm that everyone associates with him is kind of given more free reign for me, at least, because it becomes a little more innocent and less kind of, it can be cruel sometimes. But the screwball part, I kind of sort of get it, I guess. Right from the get, you have the score by Henry Mancini, which, if you guys aren't familiar with Henry Mancini, Pink Panther, just think of the Pink Panther theme, right? Think,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. Like it has that very 60s vibe.
Oh, yeah. The Pink Panther, Peter Gunn. There's at least, let me see, there was another one I had written down here. Let's see. Even Breakfast at Tiffany's, too. The one that you like. I know you've seen that one and you like it a lot, too. So all these great 60s movies, he almost kind of represents a little bit of the 60s film aesthetic, at least in audio form for me. But it makes sense. He's got that kind of light jazz going that he's so famous for. And it's just really awesome in a movie like this.
I was thinking about this when you're reading your synopsis of this film. This has nothing to do with this film at all. I want to make this very clear. I want to know what was in the water of the writers' rooms across America, because I don't know if you noticed this or not. This is the second film that we have covered that is about a bunch of World War II GIs stealing money from people. And I'm like, Ocean's 11. And I'm sitting there like, why is that the case?
Like something about the 60s. I know there was more distrust of the government in the 60s.
Yeah.
I didn't think it really hit its zenith, though, and it didn't hit its really apex of that kind of distrust until you got to like the Nixon years, which came later. Is everything cynical already? Because I know, and things are kind of moving in that direction, I guess, already. You could see some of it in the late 50s, I think. But that could be starting to creep in there, too. You have two movies coming out at roughly the same time period that involve, if anyone had told anyone in the 50s, it's like in about 10 years, you're going to see, GIs portrayed as not necessarily entirely wholesome people, not the quote unquote good guys. You might get a little bit more doubt in that circumstance. I don't know. I've never lived in the 50s. What do I know? But it seems like it's like, at least culturally speaking, things were starting to change here. And at least when it came to attitudes about people that you used to think of as trustworthy,
Yeah.
That
kind of speaking of that, one of the things about her character in this movie that you're almost a bit surprised that they decided to go with this is the fact that she is an American expatriate.
Yeah, they don't make a big deal of it, but that is the case, isn't it? Getting back to trust is one of those things that's at the heart of this too. And I didn't know if I was going to like it or not because, my first reaction was kind of, It was how easy things like, she's just talking about, just her divorce to her only husband that she's ever had, to a perfect stranger, this perfect stranger who just introduced himself, out of nowhere. And she's talking to this very openly. If you guys are watching the films with us, that his name isn't Peter. In fact, his name isn't even the second name he gives her. It's not even the third name he gives her. And so, but after each one of these reveals, she comes back to, even though you would think this is a huge betrayal, right? It's within a few lines, and Cary Grant's, I guess, persuasive tactics, she's coming right back to it. And this is the kind of thing that if you know Movie Bones, that has been, a burr in my side for like the entire time we've been doing this, and longer too. It's just been one of those things. But here, amazingly, it didn't bother me. And I'm kind of like, it didn't bother me? And I want to know more about myself. Why didn't it bother me? And I'm not encouraging you people to go out there and like make films that are like all about, whenever their man lies to them, they should just forgive them within a couple lines, like just like that, But for this movie, somehow, because of the chemistry, because of the tone, specifically the tone, I think it just worked. And it is a bit of magic,
Yeah, I think some of that comes down to Audrey Hepburn herself. She's really good at just building and playing off of what's given to her and everything. And she has this way of, she can be serious. We've seen her in very serious roles, but she has this way of just almost like the chemistry that she has with the lines that she reads. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like they're playing with each other. She's building off the lines and the lines are building off of her. And in the story as a whole, I don't know if I'm actually saying this correctly, but it's just the way that she goes about taking on these roles. But we did do another movie that had her in it, Wait Until Dark, which is a super serious role. But even in that, she does bring about her comedy, her innocence, I
think the innocence is the big part with Audrey Hepburn.
Yes. Yeah. And she she lets that be a part of the reality of the setting that she's in. And, like I think that's what makes all of this work for her characters is she's able to just do these things almost naturally, kind of become used to what she's going to do in her roles. I think that makes it easier to digest what you're talking about, which is that, you had an issue with this, but with a person like her, and I will give Cary Grant his due here too, it made it a little bit easier to digest in this role than it would be in other roles.
When you said the word innocence, that really hit it for me. And she's not a doormat, but to play just kind of like this kind of enthusiastic innocence. I can't think of any other actress or actor, even for that matter, who portrays innocence quite like she did. And I don't know if any other actress could have, you could have put her into that role and have it work out nearly as well.
I can't think of anybody then. I really can't think of anybody now who would come close to that. But you're spot on that. Yeah, she had a way about her.
Let's talk about the movie more as the thriller aspect. And in movies like that, you have a lot of twists and turns. And I mentioned it earlier, but it's like you have a whole genre of films that are based on these kind of things. And this kind of subverted a lot of the tropes of some of those other films in ways that helped it, I found. And the first thing that happened was when you go into a film like this, you expect that someone is not who they say they are. And you suspect that a little bit of Cary Grant's character. And you're right. But they don't wait until like the end of the film for that to be revealed. They do it like within the first, I don't know, was it half hour? 40 minutes
Something
or so
like that.
of a 2-hour movie. And that's pretty early on. And so you're not even at the midpoint yet. And he's already been revealed as a liar once. And then, and then the twists and turns the movie takes, especially as it escalates toward the end, they do some pretty smart stuff with Walter Matthau's character. Is like they kind of shuffle him off for a while, which makes you forget about him, that he was there. They tend to keep him off screen most of the time so that he's not able to actually do anything that would indicate that, spoiler, he's the actual guy behind these murders. They did some subtle, clever work there too to keep you on your toes. After a while, if you turn the screw enough in some believable ways and do it just often enough to keep you off your balance, but not so often that it seems like you're doing it just for the shock value, then number one, it keeps you hooked. But number two, it keeps you from actually figuring out what's happening next entirely. When I finally got to the end, it's like, okay, I can finally see where it's going, but it was right toward the very end. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. And because it does seem like it's supposed to be pretty easy to figure some stuff out during this movie. I think what makes it work, like you've kind of already hinted at, is, you have someone like, first off, Walter Matthau's character, but it also helps too that, Cary Grant's character has, and I'm looking at it, 5 different aliases or four different aliases throughout this whole entire movie.
I listed them all in the notes just in case it came up.
Yeah. And it's like, you are sitting there at times going, who are you, dude? But a couple scenes that actually had me going, what's going to happen next? Because you have Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn on the poster. You have a picture of them kind of like in like what looks like a couple's pose and everything like that. Because of that, I would have 100% expected, I don't expect anything other than them two to be friends or together by the end of the movie and everything. However, because you kept kind of slowly pulling back who Cary Grant's character is, you're going, maybe he's the bad guy? And there was a time I was like, it does feel like, I remember early on in the film, I was like, it does feel like Walter Matthau's character might be not so good. And you're like, well, maybe he's actually just trying, it does those things. It ping pongs you back and forth. And it does that well, again, because one, you're kind of seeing this whole movie from the point of view of Audrey Hepburn's character. So you're and she's playing confused no matter what. And so you're just as confused as she is because she's not 100% trying to pull back the curtains herself. She's just trying to move on and everything. She doesn't necessarily want to have everything to do with this, but she's forced into this, and it's almost feels like there's this war between two men, but she's just ping pong back and forth between both of them. And one of them, you just oh, he's Peter Joshua. No, he's Alexander Dial. No, he's Adam Canfield. You're like, who are you, dude? And then and it's you think that that would mean that Walter Matthau's character is, the actual guy, but then, it does its final twist, and you're like, oh, no, okay. So it's Cary Grant's actually, not the bad guy here. Like, you're kind of led to believe a little bit. And Cary Grant does a good job, too, of making you think for a little while he is this not so great guy.
He did it enough to make me believe that she would believe it, although I suspected, given the tone of the film, that if it did end on such a dark twist where the person that she trusted the most the whole time and had the most airtime, screen time with, turned out to be the biggest betrayer of all, that might have ruined the tone that they were going for.
Yeah.
So I suspected that he was going to be good, although following along, I could certainly see and completely understood from her position why she wouldn't necessarily believe that. And I think the other thing that Walter Matthau does really well, and I don't know if it's his choice or if his director's helping him along, but the first time you see him in his office, he's talking in a way that's almost like, it's kind of the opposite kind of persona you would expect to be suspicious. He's got this very quiet kind of humor going on in his words. Right, just kind of like, putting out, like he's so put upon that, she, with the kind of sandwich, do you want to have a sandwich, kind of a thing. And, you want, liverwurst or chicken and that kind of stuff. It's very much a naturalistic kind of he's putting on. He's putting on this very, this very naturalistic thing. And he does it well enough that you kind of want to believe that he's on the level. It makes it that much easier to kind of put him out of your mind as a possible threat until much, much later. When it becomes, well, there's only one person left besides Cary Grant. And I don't think they're going to make Cary Grant the bad guy. That's the only thing that tips me off. But it's buried in there.
Where's the money?
Is that why you dragged me all the way up here to ask me that? Supposing I had it, do you really think I'd just hand it over to you?
Step back.
Back where?
That's the idea.
I just want to do a quick shout out to the supporting cast in this movie, the ones who play Charlie, her now dead husband's ex-buddies, who are all trying to get her for the money. I really liked two in particular. There's George Kennedy's his Scobie. He played a really good job with Menace, and especially he's the guy with the mechanical hand, I guess. And James Coburn's Tex, and both those guys came off really. They had some really fun lines. The whole movie is loaded with fun lines, not just from the protagonist either. For those keeping score, this is the second film we've covered on Movie Bones, where a clip from the movie was previously seen by yours truly by way of the 80s videotape-based game Doorways to Adventure. It's basically you roll the die, it gives you a color, you fast forward to a certain color screen, it shows you an adventure and gives you instructions on how to play that round. The clips that they use for each adventure, so to speak, are just clips from old movies. And this is one of them. And so I was like, I like pointing that out. So if there's anyone else my age out there, it's like who played this game in the 80s or 90s, it's in there. So just keep an eye. It's the toe tag scene where she's identifying her husband in the morgue. Anyway. So that's about it. And you had one more bit of trivia though, didn't you?
Oh, yes. Well, I've got a couple things to say about this movie when it comes to trivia. First off, I didn't know this until just today. Actually, these two things I didn't know until just today when we're getting ready for this. This movie is based on a short story that I'm planning on reading later on this afternoon. If you go to the Wikipedia page, scroll all the way to the bottom of the Wikipedia page, you'll find this little section that calls public domain status. This movie went out into the public domain immediately after it was released because they forgot to put some copyright stuff on there. So you can watch this film literally anywhere. In fact, Wikipedia has a full copy of this movie on their page at the very bottom. And I was scrolling through it earlier. I don't think you can hear anything that I'm looking at right now because I'm scrolling through it and listening to some parts. But it's really good quality.
It's available on Wikipedia. I do wonder how many more films there are like this out there, that have that little mistake where they say, oops, we forgot to put the copyright thing in the right place. And now it's like, well, I guess we have to write that one off then.
Yeah. Yeah, but
you
can watch it for free on Wikipedia or on YouTube.
Yeah, it's like, so there you go, folks. I mean, this is one that even on Movie Bones, you don't have to really worry about it ever going away on Tubi, really, because if it goes away on Tubi, go to Wikipedia,
Yeah. How many of you could say you watched the whole film on Wikipedia?
I watched the whole film on Wikipedia. And it's like, anyway, let's, and then one more thing I want to ask, does affixing a rare stamp to a modern envelope kind of ruin the value of it? The stamps have, you guys know, if you watch the film, the stamps are where the value, where the loot is. The money was put into the rare stamps. But it ends up on an envelope, too. And it's like, if you put a rare stamp on a modern envelope. Now, I've seen Brewster's Millions. Have you seen that movie?
I don't think I've seen that movie.
It's got Richard Pryor. It's from the 80s. It's got John Candy and Richard Pryor in it. And, the point of the movie is he has to spend a large amount of money in order to gain a larger inheritance. He uses that little trick, the idea of devaluing something, because he can't keep anything of value for himself. That's part of the deal. To inherit the larger sum of money, he's got to spend $15 million, something like that. And just to get the larger inheritance, but to waste money faster, he ends up buying a bunch of rare stamps and then putting them on and just mailing them out. It's like, okay, that's clever. And it was a great moment in the movie, but I'm thinking of that in this movie. And it's like, did he just kind of ruin everyone's day? That would have been an interesting twist to the end if that was the case. So
they're worth nothing now.
All that for nothing. And I do kind of like movies where, you have this mad dash for cash and it all proves to be naught, all comes to naught. I have a soft spot for that kind of thing.
I get that.
Yeah. So anyway, let's see. Verdict time, man. What do you got?
Oh,
it's high. I just don't know how high it's going to be. It's Audrey Hepburn. Okay, it's Audrey Hepburn. Duh, Justin.
It's automatic. Yeah, automatic. Fortune and glory.
Oh man.
It's not just that. The comedies in this movie is good. The action's really good. It does twist and turn you enough. I'm a sucker for mystery and I'm a sucker for romance. Both those things happen in this movie. So and the acting is so good. The chemistry between all the actors are so good. I give it Fortune and Glory. Right, anytime Audrey Hepburn's on film, I'm honestly probably going to give it a Fortune and Glory.
Man, I should have remembered your Audrey Hepburn goggles. I should have remembered those.
Yeah. I've got Audrey Hepburn goggles and I have Ingrid Bergman goggles.
Oh, man. Anyway, man. So I don't have those goggles, so my verdict is still high. It's not as high as that, but it is a trust me. I mean, of all the films we've watched in Movie Bones, actually the one that came to mind when I was deciding what to give Charade was oddly enough 12 Angry Men. And going back to I was thinking back to my review of that film and how one of the criteria that I used there was the fact that although it was a wonderfully dramatic film and it was compelling and it was well acted and all the things you really want out of it, it was so revolving around the twists and turns themselves that once you kind of knew what the twists and turns were, it was like there wasn't that. I think it would have taken a lot out of it to watch it too soon, and that was pretty much it. I gave it, I think, in a museum. I think we both did, looking back. But this one, although it has lots of those same kind of twists and turns, you don't always see them coming, and you might just remember them next time if you watched it very soon. This movie has something that one didn't. It has the banter. It has just the kind of fun. This is a fun movie, and 12 Angry Men is not. I mean, it's not just in the title. They're angry, right? But it's like, no, it's a serious drama about a serious issue. This movie has serious stuff going on, but it's overall a fun movie. It's about having fun. And for that reason, and because they do the fun stuff so well, it bumps it up. This is a trust me.
I agree with that. Yeah.
That's not just a wrap for the show, folks. This is a wrap for season 1, if you will. We're on episode 52. And as you all know, there's 52 weeks in a year, and we do one episode a week. So, season 1 is done. It's been a full year of movies, and we really hope you enjoyed the ride as much as we have. We're not done, of course. Movie Bones Series 2 starts next week, and we'll get into which films we'll be kicking that off with in a moment. But I first wanted to mention that Ryan and I are planning a bonus episode soon to celebrate the milestone that we've just achieved. We'll be offering our best and worst picks from the first season, fill in some missing reviews from the episodes we aired before we had a rating system, and maybe even surprise each other with some award categories we spring on each other at the last moment there, just to keep it lively. So in any case, we're planning on having some fun and hope you're going to join us for it, so keep an eye out. As usual, if you're watching these movies alongside us and hearing our reactions, please do like, subscribe, comment, and of course, follow us on your podcast purveyor of choice. Tell us if you think we got it all wrong, because, we do. We can be wrong. And maybe nominate some films you'd like us to see do, especially if they're available for free, because this adventure comes with no strings attached, guaranteed. In any case, Ryan and I thank you again for sticking with us. And for the next leg of our adventure, what do we have for the first episode of the season 2?
We have a movie titled The Trial, starring Anthony Perkins. Tubi tells us that this movie is based off a Kafka novel, or on the Kafka novel. An unassuming office worker is arrested and stands trial without ever being informed of the charges against him. And real quick, I've never seen this movie in my whole entire life, but I'm not gonna lie, I've had this like nightmare before.
You have?
Like, not like a nightmare, but like this thought, like what happens if like you get like you just literally don't know why you're being
No.
arrested
And
and everything.
Yeah.
It's like a fear. It's like an actual fear.
Well, I mean, and sometimes in some places, and you hope it never is the place you live in now, but there are places where that kind of thing happens. Enough to scare people. Hopefully, knock on wood, we're not going to ever become one of those places. Knock on wood. Anyway, yes, I think it was made in 1960. I don't have the date on me, but I think it's 60. It's in the 60s, I think, because Anthony Perkins, pretty much. Anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. The premise certainly sounds like Kafka. I mean, knowing what little I do, I've read a little bit of Kafka back in high school, I think. I think we had to read The Metamorphosis, which, if you're not familiar with it, guy wakes up as a giant cockroach. It's metaphorical. It's more metaphorical than anything else. All right, well, I think I can't think of anything else to say about this episode, man. So I guess, folks out there, we'll see you next week. And Ryan, I'll see you next week.
See you next week.
All right, guys. Bye.
Now, who would have done a mean thing like that?